gatto, Mr. Roboto.
Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da. Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da.
Welcome, geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to another all-new edition of Geek to Me Radio. Today we have a crossover of epic proportions. I have joined up with Max on Movies. This show aired on his station, and now it's going to air here for our Valentine's Day celebration about the best pop culture couples of all time. Stand by.
We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek and Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors, 4 Hogwarts houses, 1 ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
And for those of you listening to this, wherever you find it, on iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Podomatic, iTunes, wherever you get your pop culture stuff at, we thank you for finding us. We thank you for subscribing to us. And this week, actually last week, we celebrated Valentine's Day. I'm a little behind because I was out of town at Gallifrey 1. We'll have more on that later. But Max on Movies and I decided to team up and do a pop culture top couples Valentine's Day special. He covered the movies, I covered TV, and then we kind of bantered back and forth about comic books. So we're going to go ahead and roll right into it.
I am doing fantastic. This is going to be a fun broadcast. We're going to do a special Valentine's Day episode of both Max on Movies and Geek to Me Radio. This is almost like back in the day where ABC and CBS would simulcast a show, or if I can, Anagram Comics. Is that what it was? Anagram? Amalgam Comics. Yes. Thank you. I'll be editing that in post. Amalgam Comics, where DC and Marvel would come together. And that's what we're doing here. We're going to join forces and do a Valentine's Day show. So you'll not only hear this on the Big 550 KTRS on Max and Movies, but you'll also hear it on iHeartRadio with Geek to Me Radio.
Exactly right. This will be a Valentine's Day special, so I thought, you being the movie guy, you'd have your favorite movie couples throughout history, which of course I'll comment if I agree or disagree. I might throw out a couple of my own.
Absolutely.
Me being less of a movie guy than you, but very much pop culture, I was going to throw out some TV famous couples.
Oh, fun.
And maybe then we can both banter about famous comic book couples,
Absolutely.
since we're both comic book fans.
We are comic book fans. I'm holding in my hot little hands right now Avengers number 81, which features a couple that might be on our list, as a matter of fact, but we'll get to that in a moment. So yeah, when I knew we were going to do this, I thought I would jot down, you mentioned on your Twitter that we were going to do top 10. So I didn't bother ranking these couples because that's way too much work.
Right.
And it kind of and rankings are sort of arbitrary anyway. What makes number 1 more than number 3?
Exactly.
And so I just sort of jotted them down. But I do have one TV couple in here.
Oh, okay.
That I'll sort of end with that so we can kind of go into some TV stuff. But first, before we get into the list of the best couples from pop culture in celebration of Valentine's Day, you mentioned something on your Twitter, which is at Geek to Me Radio.
Exactly right.
And of course, people can follow me at Max and Movies. Something that I was interested in that I thought we could talk about here for a moment. I've looked at Kickstarter. I've looked at GoFundMe. I've looked at Patreon. Which, of course, for people like you and I, this is not our full-time job.
I wish.
Yeah, I know that you wish that you could just be a broadcaster doing Geek to Me Radio. I wish I could just do the Max and Movie Show. But, of course, we both have day jobs. And so because of this, we've looked at these different crowdfunding things to maybe get a couple of dollars here and there so we can keep doing this, because something else the audience might not know is this isn't free.
No.
And not to, play the world's smallest violin, because here we are on the air and it's fantastic and wonderful, but every little bit helps. And I have investigated these platforms. I have not pulled the trigger on any of them because, like a lot of creative people, I feel sheepish getting paid for being creative. And I think that all creative people need to get over that. And that brings me to something that you mentioned on your Twitter, at Geek to Me Radio. And once again, you can follow me at Max Movies. It's something called Buy Me a Coffee. If you could explain to the audience what Buy Me a Coffee is, really not so much for the audience, but for me, because I might sign up and start doing this.
So Buy Me a Coffee is a free app. You can use it on your iPhone. You can get the app there, but you can also use it on your desktop or laptop computer. Basically, you put it out there, and as opposed to Patreon, although people can subscribe to it, it is a quick way to, it's kind of like when you go to a restaurant. And when you go to Starbucks, we'll keep it in the coffee realm.
Sure, absolutely.
You go to Starbucks, the barista is really good, gets your name correct when he calls it out.
And you know what you do? You just give him a couple bucks.
Yeah, you toss them. So it's the same thing virtually. So this is a way you put out a link to your Buy Me a Coffee account, and then people can say, hey, you know what? That was a great movie review that you just did on Birds of Prey, Max.
Sure.
Here's $5. I bought you a coffee as a tip.
Now, see, I love this because, again, when you go to the GoFundMe's, the Kickstarter, especially the Patreons, I like the idea of, hey, I'll do something extra for some extra money, but then that gets into the dancing monkey sort of let me play the cymbals for you for extra money, and I'm uncomfortable with that. And people have to sign up, and they have to get an account, and they have to do whatever. And quite frankly, we're not going to do that, right? So Buy Me a Coffee feels like, wow, I really like James and Max together. That sounded really good. Let me give them $2.
And it's very simple to do. You can do it through PayPal. You can do it through Stripe. You can use it with a credit card. So there's multiple different payment options. So it's like, oh, I've got to create an account on this. No, you really don't.
Yeah.
You can just click the link, what payment method you want to use, boom.
So right now, people are listening to this show and they're taking pity on us because we are very talented broadcasters who would like a cup of coffee. How do they donate? How does that happen?
So I will have the link by the time this airs on my Twitter account at Geek to Me Radio. Little link there. You just click the link on the Buy Me a Coffee thing, and you can leave a comment. You can say, hey, great show that you did with Max. Here's a coffee. And it can be, I think, anywhere, any amount you want. $1 to $10. Sure. If it's one of those Starbucks Frappuccinos and it's $12.50, but still.
It's still, every little bit helps, and it helps us on the air, too. So I might look into that, too. Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you so much for that. All right, so let's start off. What we're doing here is we're going to talk about Valentine's Day. We're going to talk about the best couples in pop culture. So we're going to do comic books, we're going to do TV, and, of course, we're going to do movies. Before we take a break here on the Big 550 KTRS on the show Max on Movies, we're going to run off a couple of my favorite on-screen couples. And I think some of them might surprise you, but what I want you to do here, James, is chime in, okay? Right. So first of all, we've got a couple that I think has been sort of controversial, and I could see why, because I think there's an element of Stockholm Syndrome here, but I think that the newer versions of the story soften that and kind of expand and explain that a little bit. I'm talking about Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, okay.
And the reason why I put Beauty and the Beast here is not just because of the original French fairy tale, which of course is wonderful and romantic. It has its share of violence and problems as well. But you also had the television series with Linda Hamilton and Ron Perlman.
Yes.
That's where Ron Perlman came from, was that TV series. And yes, Linda Hamilton from the Terminator show. If you have never seen that television series, it's really well done. But also you have the live action version with Emma Watson and Luke Evans is a wonderful guest on. But all of that, the Disney version, the animated version, the most famous version, with Paige O'Hara, of course, as the voice of Belle. None of that works if you don't believe their love story, if you're not invested in these two very different people. And I think it works in every different version. So.
And the moral of that story is, if you do lock a girl up, give her a library. It'll be fine.
You know what? Books can solve everything. Exactly. But to that point, though, yes, The Beast is awful. But I think if you watch, they had a direct to DVD, or I guess VHS at the time, called like An Enchanted Christmas.
I remember that.
And it was more about them sort of softening towards one another. And in the live action version, Disney actually incorporated some of that. And I thought it was great because it made it less creepy in a way. So again, controversial, but my first choice would be Beauty and the Beast. A little less controversial, but I almost didn't put it on here because they're a little milquetoast, I have to say. But I think the sense of love and the love story is one that both genders can get behind. This is maybe the first love story that young men get into, and I mean young boys, because young women, they've got their Dirty Dancing, they've got their rites of passage movies, but I think every 12-year-old boy has been Fred Savage about to watch The Princess Bride going, a love story. Does this have kissing? But all of a sudden, the story of Wesley and Buttercup just strikes you right in the heart.
Yes, that's actually one of the ones I would have done for my top 10 movie couples. Again, no particular order.
Right, of course
but
not.
That's a classic movie. It's a great movie. That's one that should not be remade either, in my opinion. If they're going to remake movies like Hollywood's doing, don't do it.
You know, and I'm a big fan of remakes. I think that remakes get a bad rap. I think that if you have a quality story, it's wonderful to see it with new eyes. I like reinterpretations of stories. I don't see how you could. I would rather Citizen Kane or these giant. You know, I would rather The Godfather be remade than Princess Bride.
Agreed.
It is in all respects a perfect version of that movie. The cast, the script, I don't see how you could possibly improve on.
And that's funny because when they announced that they were looking at doing a reboot or a remake, Wesley himself, Cary Ells, tweeted out, he said, there's a shortage of perfect movies in the world. It'd be a pity to spoil this one.
Which is wonderful, and a wonderful sort of a dance around the dialogue there as well. Jamie Lee Curtis, who is married to the six-fingered man, Christopher Guest.
Yes.
She also tweeted out vicious defense of that movie, saying, you know, it's perfect, you need to leave it alone. So I think that I doubt that would happen. I could see maybe an animated version, some sort of riff on it maybe, but still, it'd be useless.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to a classic. I mentioned Citizen Kane, but that's an awful love story. But let's go to Casablanca. Of course, one of the greatest movies of all time. You've got Bogey, you've got Ingrid Bergman, who looks luminous in that movie, and Bogey's a romantic lead you wouldn't expect in a movie like this. And of course, it's heartbreaking because, spoiler alert, for a movie that's 75 years old, they do not wind up together because of some choices that they make. But I love that love story. You believe it when they're on the runway. You believe their heartbreak. And I think that you can't have a story for Valentine's Day and about love in movies without involving heartbreak.
Yeah, very true.
There's some people in the audience who are rolling their eyes at Casablanca and Princess Bride because they're a little too safe. So let's go weird again.
Okay.
All right. How weird do you want to go? Do you want to go a little weird or super weird?
I want to get super weird.
You want to get super weird right away, huh? Okay, well, here we go. Send your letters to at Geek to Me Radio. I'm going to go with, this is for Valentine's Day for the best on-screen couples of all time. I'm going to go with Leah Thompson as Beverly and Howard the Duck.
That's a little weirder than I thought you were going to go. But...
I said, do you want to get super weird? What I love about Beverly and Howard the Duck, besides sort of crystallizing my childhood crush on Leah Thompson, who I was fortunate enough to have on the Max on Movie show, and I told her I'd been in love with her since I was a kid, and she also told me that she was in talks with Marvel about possibly directing a Howard the Duck project, which is very, very exciting. But what I like about their relationship here is, okay, they're from different worlds, they're from different species, and yet they're so supportive of one another. She never tells the duck that he's weird or strange. Everybody else does. She's totally on board with him. She's a punk rocker. He's totally supportive of her. I think it's a great love story. So I'm going to say the Duck and Beverly.
All right, good. Yeah, I will back you on that choice.
How about this? How about let's take a break, and we'll come back and we'll do some TV stuff and some comic book stuff too. We'll wrap back around with movies. Maybe nothing quite as weird as the Duck and Beverly.
We're going to stop right there. We're going to come back talking TV couples now that we've covered the movies. We're also going to let you know about our sponsor right now, Marcus Theaters. MarcusTheaters.com is the website. I'm always telling you about them. I'm always talking about how much of a movie buff I am. When I go see a movie, I get a little spoiled because I'm always seeing it at a Marcus Theaters, and there's really no comparison. Now they've got Movie Tavern, so there are even more places to see a quality movie in the best possible surroundings with the best concessions. It's just a great time. I always, whenever I do a meetup for movies, I always get my friends, I'm like, hey, let's go to this one. Let's go to the Chesterfield Marcus Theater. Let's go to the Ronnie's Theater. I always try to take them there, and I've actually converted some people. A friend of mine just recently told me, he's like, you know, I've been going to all these other theaters, and I think I'm going to start going to the Marcus Theater thing. We got him a magical rewards card while we were there, and now he, too, is a loyal Marcus customer. They've really renovated all the cinemas here in St. Louis. They've changed the game, and they've made it a top-notch experience. I've said it before on the air, folks. The movie-going experience for me is a religious thing. I love going in. I like to see a movie with a crowd of people. I love the popcorn, the soda, having the big old tub of popcorn in front of me. When I was really little, I remember getting snow caps. They have those there, too. And maybe you want to actually get dinner. Well, it's going to kind of run late. We want to get dinner, too. That's fine. MarcusTheaters.com. Check out which theater is closest to you and which one has a dine-in option. You can have the movie and the meal right there in the same room. You can grab a bite at one of the restaurants located inside the theater. It's a whole thing. Just dinner and a movie all in one place. Marcus Theaters and Movie Tavern have you covered. Buy your tickets right there online. Check out the website for all the cool stuff. And Easter is surprisingly coming up very quick. And they've got a special on April 11th. You can look up the Marcus Theaters website to find which one plays it closest to you. You can see the movie Hop, the animated movie, and Meet the Easter Bunny all at the same time on April 11th. You can mark your calendars for that right now. Check out the website. Don't take my word for it. Go to Marcus Theaters and see the difference for yourself. MarcusTheaters.com. We're going to take our first break. We're going to come back and talk TV couples right after this, so stand by.
Hi, this is James Enstall, host of Geek to Me Radio, and in honor of my favorite Themyscirian, I've decided to become an Amazon warrior.
Hera, give me strength.
The next time you want to buy something from Amazon, go to geektomeradio.com first and click on our Amazon affiliate link. Simply shop like you normally would, and when you check out, a small percentage will go towards supporting the show. So remember, the next time you want to search Amazon for the latest Wonder Woman graphic novel or parts for your invisible jet, click through from geektomeradio.com first.
The world was in peril. Would you have me stand by and do nothing?
Hi, everybody. This is James Masters with his sexy, fake British accent. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
Welcome back. A team-up of epic proportions, as I mentioned in the opening. Max on Movies and I have joined together for a special broadcast, and we decided that we were going to team up and air the same show, basically. A little bit of different intros on my show versus the intros that he gave on his show. But it's the exact same show. We banter about the best pop culture couples of all time. We did movie couples before we took our first break. Now we're going to get into the TV couples.
When I thought about the list, and unfortunately, as I told you before we started recording, I left my notes at home. They're sitting right at my desk, but I think I have most of them in memory anyway.
You know, you brought the comic book that I just bought from you, so that's fine.
That's all that matters.
That's way more
important stuff.
Yes.
But as far as TV couples, I think my mind immediately went to probably one of the classic TV couples and real-life couples of all times, Lucy and Desi.
Oh, absolutely.
The name of the show is I Love Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of Valentine's Day, when you think of famous couples, especially in the TV world, I think Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz have to rate in anyone's top 5.
Absolutely. And, you know, my 8-year-old son, Oscar, has recently discovered I Love Lucy. My wife put it on one night, and it's on Amazon Prime. You can watch the first couple of seasons. And if you had any doubt if this show could kill in 2020, it does. He is on the floor rolling around. Some of the sexual politics, of course, are a bit backwards because Lucy doesn't have a job and she's, you know, obviously trying to impress Ricky. He's a little confused by that because my wife works is very independent. Right. But the actual situations are hilarious, and you can see that love on screen. They were so supportive of one another behind the scenes, and you can tell when you're watching that show. So I Love Lucy, a great pick.
And I think, and again, these are not in particular order. These are not my top 1 through 5, and these are the best 1 through 5. These are just, in general, top 10 overall. So I'm not placing Lucy and Desi above these others, nor am I placing the next ones above the ones that come after them. But for my money, because I watched it all unfold in real time when the series was on the WB before it became the CW, I have to go with Buffy and Angel.
Oh, that is not where I thought you were going to go, because I have in my notes my only TV choice. But I didn't think you were. So, Buffy and Angel. So, okay, first of all, I don't know if we can agree on this or not, but we all hate Riley. Is that correct?
Hate's a strong word.
Okay, we all severely dislike Riley.
He wasn't the best.
He was not the best. I hated Riley, the character, not the actor. I love Buffy. It's my second favorite television show of all time. I've watched all 7 seasons multiple times. I think that Becoming Parts 1 and 2 are some of the best episodes, arguably the best episodes, at least top 5. And I do like Buffy and Angel together. But, wow, I'm surprised you would pick them over Buffy and Spike. Is Buffy and Spike just a little too complicated?
Not that it's more complicated, but what I got called out on this on Twitter on Valentine's Day one time, because I posted 2 years ago, I guess. I said, hey, happy Valentine's Day to all happy couples. And I posted some TV couples, pop culture couples. Sure. And someone said, they took me to task on Twitter. How dare you? And I didn't think about it. Yeah. But there is that one where Spike tries to rape Buffy. I'm like, well, you know what? Yeah, so all couples have their downfalls. So one of the things when I was picking my list, I was thinking of, okay, what's actually a good love? Let's not take it from, like, you went with Beauty and the Beast. I'm like, okay, I don't feel as bad about saying Spike and Buffy now. But at the same time, I kind of looked at that afterwards. I'm like, you know what? That's not a poor way to see it.
The Spike and Buffy, especially that episode, it would take us another half an hour to really dive into what was happening in that episode. I think it was pretty crazy storytelling, but also I liked what Joss was doing with Buffy and Angel. The whole idea was a young girl loses her virginity to a man, and then the man changes. Of course, in the show, he really changed. It's a little different than in real life. Into
killer.
Yes, but I get what he was doing there about how you lose your innocence in a way, and then all of a sudden the man that you thought you knew, you didn't, and of course they take it to science fiction realm. But I'm surprised you said that, because my pick for TV, I'll go ahead and tell you, was Willow and Tara.
Oh, okay. That's
one of my
a good
favorite
choice too.
on-screen couples of all time.
That Tara, spoiler alerts that are 20 years old.
Yes.
When Tara's death, I didn't see that coming.
I didn't either. And Willow's reaction, one of the most raw episodes of television.
Those last 3 episodes of season 6, absolutely brilliant.
And I like the character of Oz. That's Seth Green, who just seems like a class act, an amazing human being. And I liked Oz and Willow together. I think everybody did. Those early episodes were fine. And of course, when Oz comes back, again, great storytelling. But Willow and Tara just had such a natural, realistic relationship that I think you can look back on it and say, wow, they were pushing boundaries and how important that was. But and they were, yes. But at the time, it also just didn't it feel natural?
Like, it didn't look like, oh my gosh, they have a lesbian couple.
It didn't feel like they're making a statement. It felt like, yes, Willow and Tara. And I love that.
That's good storytelling.
Love that.
Twilight Zone did political stuff all the time, but it was done in this perfect allegorical sense, and that's why it's brilliant storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you don't know you're getting a lesson, but you're getting a lesson, that's good.
Right. Who else do you have?
I would say, now, it's kind of funny because you mentioned Tara and Willow, and I was going to go with a Netflix series, ran for 2 seasons, called Sense8.
Okay,
Did you see this?
I did not. It was the Wachowski show, correct?
No, written by J. Michael I think they produced it.
Yes, I think they produced it, yeah.
J. Michael Straczynski was the writer.
Right, yeah. Who we love. He's an amazing guy.
The characters of Nomi and Amanita, they had a wonderful relationship. You know you're really in love with someone when they will give up their life and go on the run with you when your significant other says, I'm hearing voices of 7 other people in my mind and they need help.
I mean, who hasn't done that?
But it was such a great story. I think of all the couples on that show, they were the 2 that really, I guess, you just felt how in love they were, that they would do anything for each other, and in a crazy circumstance, in a crazy world, that never changed between the 2 of them, and that's why they make my top list of couples.
Fantastic. A top list of couples, including a couple from Sense8. Do you want to do maybe a couple more here before we take a break?
Sure. I would have to go, because I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, I would have to say 10th Doctor and Rose.
Okay, now hang on. Now you have to help me out here. Is that Christopher Eccleston?
That is David Tennant.
Okay, see, I'm
You're
not
very close. You're in the ballpark.
Not a Doctor Who person. I'm sure the audience is freaking out and gasping right now. But Rose, she's a companion, correct? Because I didn't think the Doctor and the companion ever got together.
They didn't. This was when they brought the series back in 2005 under Russell T Davies was the head writer and showrunner.
Right.
9th Doctor Chris Eccleston regenerated into 10th Doctor David Tennant.
So 9th Doctor Eccleston had Billy Piper.
He did.
Okay.
And then Billy Piper stayed on with David Tennant.
Okay.
As is wont to do sometimes in these series. The companion will remain the same, even though the Doctor changes. That happened in the classic series, too.
I'm going to look really dumb here in front of the audience. Who was Karen Gillan?
Karen Gillan was Amy Pond.
Amy Pond, who has
she
nothing
was with the
to
11th
do.
Doctor.
She's with Matt Smith?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to follow along, people. So why did they make one of your favorite couples?
That was when I started watching Doctor Who. I started with 9 when the reboot came back. I knew of the series, and I'd seen a handful of Tom Baker episodes and a couple with his replacement, Peter Davison, who is David Tennant's father now.
Oh, okay.
Father-in-law, I should say.
Father-in-law.
But this was the first time they'd done a companion Doctor romance of any kind, and a lot of hardcore classic Doctor Who fans did not like it.
I could totally see that. It would almost be like if Bond and Moneypenny actually got together, because they've always had a flirtatious relationship, but it's always been more one-sided with Moneypenny, and I could, to sort of do a comparison there, I could see how hardcore fans would be upset about that. Like you, when I was growing up, Tom Baker was my Doctor Who. I remember the Jelly Babies and the scarf and all that kind of stuff, but that's as far as I went, and I never came back when Eccleston relaunched the show, so I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, they kind of built up. You could tell Rose was infatuated with the Doctor, played by Chris Eccleston, but then when he changed into David Tennant, for those of you who don't know, when the Doctor is grievously injured or dying,
regenerates.
He can regenerate, and he becomes a new person, a new personality. Still traits of the original Doctor throughout, but the Doctor and Rose, 10th Doctor and Rose, kind of fell in love. And when they finally had to part, as the Doctor and companion often do, it was heartbreaking. That scene was just devastating because she had confessed that she loved him. He was burning out his son to stay in the place where she was in order just to say goodbye to her. It was really good. Now, that having said, I would not want to see another Doctor companion romance
because that one was
been
special.
Done, and that was, exactly. So yeah.
All right, well, let's end with one more, and then we'll take a break and come back with some more movies and some comics.
Well, it's funny you mentioned comic books. I'm going to put this under the classification of TV, although it would easily fall into the classification of movies. But because we're getting a series from whence the movies came and from the comic books, I'm going to
Siri is saying yes, James.
I'm going to go with Wanda and the Vision. Thank you, Siri. That did not help me at all.
Yes, WandaVision, my most anticipated Disney Plus show, that and What If, which I think is going to be incredible. We both love that comic series. WandaVision's based on, they're going to do whatever they want to do, but it's based on a 12-issue comic book series that had Wanda Maximoff and the Vision, her husband, living in a sort of a picket fence kind of scenario with kids and everything. And of course, comic readers were like, "How could this be?" And nothing was as it seemed. It's a wonderful, wonderful comic series. And Disney said, "Let's do that." And Disney and Marvel have done this since the dawn of the MCU, where every couple of years I think, I can't believe they're doing this. And that's what WandaVision is for me.
Yeah, it's going to be brilliant. I think they're taking it. They had some previews for it during the Super Bowl, and everyone was talking about it. They've got Wanda back in her original comic book accurate costume, which I'm assuming is for a bit of a Halloween throwback. But you can see like one of the sets looks like the Brady Bunch set.
Yes.
And obviously they're doing kind of a Leave It to Beaver where it's a black and white. So obviously her mutant powers to alter reality.
Yeah, none of that's
obviously
happening.
Are affecting some of this things.
Because Vision is no longer with us. Spoiler alert. I mean, this is. I think I think this is Wanda's grief. I think that we are seeing Wanda run from her issues, and I think that there's also going to be a couple of villains involved, possibly if they follow the books. Don't trust your neighbors, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
All right. As we return, I'm going to wrap up the movies, and we'll talk about some comic books, too. This is the Geek to Me Radio and Max on Movies Wonder Twins Unite show for Valentine's Day. We're talking about the best on-screen couples of all time. You can follow James Install on Twitter at Geek to Me Radio. You can follow me on Twitter at Max on Movies. We'll be back with more.
And you may have noticed these segments are a little bit longer. On his setting, we have to do 3 segments, so we're changing up the game a little bit for you here. 3 segments on my show as well this time. Before we do go to break, though, I want to make sure you know about our premier sponsor, the City of St. Charles. That's discoverstcharles.com. That's the website, discoverstcharles.com. Saint is not spelled out, stcharles.com. So much to see, so much to do, so much fun to be had, and spring is right around the corner. It's almost there. We're in the last week of February. We're closing in on March. Before you know it, the weather's going to be nice. The flowers are going to start to bloom. You'll want to get outside and enjoy the fresh air. City of St. Charles is a great place to do just that. Have you ever is it bike rode or bike ridden? Have you ever gotten a bike and ridden the Katy Trail? We'll put it like that. If you haven't, that's something fun to do. Frontier Park is always open. You can always walk up and down and check out the historic markers on all the buildings. Food, glorious food up and down the streets. Lots of places to eat. Lots of unique shopping and dining experiences. A great time is had by all. It's a beautiful time. There's not a bad time to visit St. Charles, but the spring is particularly nice. It's just a great atmosphere. It's fun. The whole family will like it. There's something for everyone. So if you're from out of town, if you're not in the greater St. Louis, St. Charles area, come on down. Plenty of places to stay while you're here. I'd let you crash with me. I don't have quite enough room for all of you, though I apologize in advance. But come check it out. It's a great place. They were the first sponsor to jump on with me as soon as I started the radio show, and they've been with me ever since, and I greatly appreciate it. You need to come and check them out. Go to the website, plan your trip. Whether you're just going to come for a day, whether you're going to stay for a week, there's plenty to keep you busy. So plan your trip now. DiscoverStCharles.com. We're going to take our last break. Come back with our final segment right after this. Stand by.
Hello, everyone. This is Paul Souls, voice of Spider-Man, and Ermy, the misfit elf, wanted to be a dentist on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Coming to you on Geek to Me Radio. Hope you enjoy. Talk with you soon.
Here comes the Spider-Man.
Welcome back. Longer segments this time, but fewer of them. Normally we do 5 segments. We're cutting it down to 3 segments. And on this show,
the best on-screen couples of all time from movies, TV, and we'll throw in some comic books as well. You had one more TV you wanted to throw in.
I did. I'm an 80s kid. I love all things 80s. And while I went through and racked my brain about the different TV couples, there's so many to pick from. But I was a huge fan of Cheers. And while I liked Rebecca,
I was going to say, there is a correct couple and an incorrect couple for you to choose right now.
They were not actually a couple until the very end. They decided to have a baby together. But Sam and Diane, even when she came back during the later seasons,
those were great episodes.
And that was that. To me, Diane is going to be the love of Sam's life, and vice versa. Even though she was with Frasier, that didn't work out, obviously. But
about that.
Sam and Diane are definitely in my top 10 list of all-time favorite TV couples.
All right, I wanted to wrap it back around to movies. I had 4 couples left really quick. Going to do this rapid fire before we get into the comic books and then say so long for today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I got one I had to put on here. Again, people might roll your eyes, but it's not as crazy as Howard the Duck and Beverly. I'm talking about Jack and Rose. Oh, no. Where did you think I was
thought you were
going to
say Jack and Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas.
No, but now I'm very angry with myself because my wife loves that movie. I love that movie. And you're right. Jack and Sally should absolutely. Although I feel like Jack Skellington is a little clueless the whole time about Sally's feelings until maybe the end when he gets his own stuff worked out and then he realizes, oh, wait a minute, I have this
did all this for me,
Yeah, but no, they should have been here. No, I put Jack and Rose from Titanic.
Also a great choice.
Because, it's a great movie. It gets a lot of hate, but James Cameron did an amazing job with it. The sets are incredible. He even digitally recreated the night sky to have the exact same constellations.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
He went back in post and said, what did the sky look like that night? And digitally made the constellations accurate to that night when they were all freezing to death. That's how crazy he is.
Wow.
But I think that if you're not on board with, no pun intended, with Jack and Rose, you're not going to care about them and about that movie. So I thought it was fantastic. Going way back to the 1930s with the earliest version of Wuthering Heights with Catherine and Heathcliff, played by Vivien Leigh and Laurence Olivier. I love both of those actors. I love that book. And even though it's a softened ending, it's kind of a happy ending. The book does not have a happy ending. It's still a really lovely love story and 2 amazing actors at the top of their game. Vivien Leigh is incredible in that movie. Here's maybe my most controversial one. You might actually walk out of the studio. And
get my coat on just in case.
Exactly. I'm going to talk about the best on-screen couples, and I'm primarily bringing up these 2 for a couple of reasons. Not because of the franchise, not because of the fandom, because of the very first movie, which nobody thought was going to be a very big hit. Okay, it was a low budget. It was a smaller director who hadn't done a lot of big things. These 2 had such chemistry, and I think that if a film fan could watch this movie and see the electric chemistry between these 2 in certain scenes. They went on to have a very long and public relationship, which is no longer, it dissolved after that. But I think that spoke to the real life chemistry that these 2 had in this movie. I'm talking about Edward and Bella from the movie Twilight.
I didn't realize they dated in real life. I thought you were going to switch over and say Mr. and Mrs. Smith when you said real life relationship.
I was trying to stay away from adultery.
Okay.
Because he was married to Jennifer Aniston at the time.
Yeah,
Brad
that's
Pitt
true.
was.
Yeah.
No, I think that when Catherine Hardwicke, who's an amazing director, she's been a guest here on Max and Movies, when she made that film, they were thinking this is going to be a small vampire movie and it's a romance, and people hadn't done that since Interview with a Vampire. And they thought, well, it's a small company, Lionsgate, and it's just going to play on a couple of screens. They had no idea it was going to be that huge. And I think that, Pattinson, who is an amazing actor, I think people realize that now, and Kristen Stewart, who is an amazing actor, people realize that now. If you're making a face. The audience might be making a face too, but if you haven't watched the French films Clouds of Sils Maria or Personal Shopper, 2 films that she's incredible in, Adventureland she's also very good in. Anyway, their chemistry together was next level in that film. And I know a lot of film bros, a lot of film fans are like, oh, Twilight. I'm not talking about the movie, I'm talking about those 2. So that's why they're on my list. And then finally, I would say that Brokeback Mountain, Ennis and Jack from Brokeback Mountain. That's Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger. Now, I talked about staying away from adultery. In this movie, they're both married.
Right.
To Michelle Williams and Anne Hathaway, respectively. But I think the heartbreak in this movie and the discord between the two of them works because you buy them as a couple. And think about it. At the time, this is Heath Ledger, well-known actor. This is Jake Gyllenhaal, even more well-known actor. And yet, audiences are crying their eyes out because they believe this love story. That's a huge accomplishment. My hat's off to Ang Lee.
Yeah, that's I hadn't thought about that particular movie, but you're right. That was a well done piece of story writing.
Did I redeem myself after the Twilight?
You did.
With Brokeback, did that
little
help?
bit.
A little bit.
It swung back the other way a little.
In the final moments we have here on this Geek to Me Radio / Max on Movies show, which we should do more of, by the way.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the best comic book couples of all time. You and I are both huge comic book fans, and we've had comic book writers and artists on both of our shows, and we just love the art form so much. We could honestly, I think, between the two of us, have done an hour just on comic book couples, easily. But I think the audience would have revolted and left. And so let's not do an hour,
right.
But I'm going to hand it over to you, and let's talk about it.
Okay, I would say that there's a couple in both the big two companies, DC and Marvel, that are iconic. And I think it doesn't get more iconic for me than Peter and MJ, Spider-Man and Mary Jane from Marvel Comics.
Has to be.
Yeah.
Has to be number one. I know that people out there will say Lois and Clark. Obviously,
which I get.
We've had television shows. We're about to have another television show. I get it as well. But I would have to say, for my money, Peter and MJ are the number one couple.
And I will say it's puzzling that even the Raimi movies, which probably did the best job, but we haven't gotten, because Zendaya and Tom Holland have good chemistry.
But they do nothing together.
No.
I mean, I love Tom Holland as Pete. I'm not necessarily behind Zendaya's version of MJ. I get what they're doing, but not really for me. I do think the Raimi movies did the best job. I think somebody could do a better job.
Absolutely.
Going forward. We haven't really seen, again, Raimi did a lot right. She's a model. She is doing her own thing. I mean, he got a lot right there.
Yeah.
But, and of course, Toby and Kirsten were a couple in real life too. So you talk about chemistry.
Right.
But, no, I think that somebody else could come along and give us a better Peter and MJ. I'll counter with Pete and Gwen.
Yes, and I did. I will say, the one thing of The Amazing Spider-Man, the two movies that we got, I liked that they started with Gwen.
Absolutely. And, I really, really disliked those movies. Being such a giant Spider-Man fan, I was crushed. I was crestfallen watching those movies because it was not my Spider-Man. Not to sound too dumb, but I really was angry after those movies. But I completely agree that I loved starting with Gwen, and again, a real life couple. Andrew and Emma Stone were a real life couple for a while too. So again, that chemistry leaps off the screen.
And again, this is not to put them behind Peter and MJ, in my opinion, but they are a little bit behind, even though they've been around longer. Lois and Clark clearly has to be on anyone's list of greatest comic book couples. I know a lot of people now with The Flash on TV think Barry and Iris, but
Barry and Iris is his main squeeze.
Yes.
Sure. I think the Iris is Barry's main squeeze because comic book characters had to have one, and that's who the writers came up with. I think that what they've been able to do with Iris on that television show has been extraordinary because they've made her a three-dimensional character.
Yeah.
And that was not necessarily the case before. So.
Right. But see, my Flash, because Barry was dead when I started reading comic books when I was growing up.
Wally West person.
I'm a Wally West.
Really?
Wally West will always be my Flash.
Interesting.
And I liked Wally and Linda Park better than Barry and Iris in the later run that Mark Waid started. I'm
going to switch over from DC to Marvel, and I know that people call this Marvel's first family, and I know that it's always a family book, and people love talking about Johnny Storm and Ben Grimm, but to me, I really love Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman as a married couple. I think that first and foremost, yeah, that's her brother, and yeah, that's his best friend, but they're a married couple. I think that's great. In a time where editors are always telling writers they can't be married, or Spidey can't be married, or Clark can't let Lois know who he is. That's the foundation of the Fantastic Four, is their marriage.
And I think that they weren't married right off the bat, obviously, because she was Sue Storm until they got married. And I think Fantastic Four Annual number 3, I want to say.
You would know better than I.
But they've been probably the longest married couple in comic book history, I think.
It has to be.
Lois and Clark didn't tie the knot until the 90s.
That's right.
So,
which I have that wedding album.
Yes.
It was very well done. It was less crazy than Pete and MJ's wedding.
Yes,
which
that was
just ridiculous.
But that cover by John Romita for that particular
cover.
annual is fantastic.
I'm just seeing it in my head right now. I'm almost tearing up. It's great. Who else do you have?
I would have to say that it's not one of the most conventional ones, but Gambit and Rogue, I think would rate with any, especially a modern couple.
Absolutely.
Because they've got that pull. They can't be together. It's that unrequited love due to Rogue's power to absorb anyone else's powers and psyche if she touches them. So that kind of rules out.
I'm going to keep it in the X family, just so you know.
Yeah.
But no, I do love Gambit and Rogue. Obviously, the animated series pushed that along, but those books in the 90s, there's an iconic X-Men cover where she's leaping into Gambit's arms.
X-Men 45, I believe.
It's one of the best covers. I love that image. I think that's really great. And the two of them make a really great couple.
Yes.
To keep it in the X family, probably my favorite couple besides Peter and MJ would have to be Kitty Pryde and Peter Rasputin.
Yes.
I love the character of Colossus, and Kitty Pryde is my favorite X-Men character of all time. I've got her first appearance. I've got her first couple of years in the X house when she was just a little kid, and I loved Xavier's relationship with her and her learning all of the ropes, and I just identify with that character a lot. And I think that they're so different. Peter's this giant Russian, and of course she's this little tiny Jewish girl from New York, and I love the two of them together. And of course Kitty has become an incredible X-Man through the years, and this is wonderful character, and I just love the two of them together. I don't think they're together anymore.
I don't think at this particular moment, but that could always change. No, they just got married in the comic books. That's right. They just got married.
Where have I been? How come I don't have that issue?
A year ago.
Well, I should go back and grab that issue. I love Joss Whedon's run on Astonishing.
Yes.
And I loved Kitty's arc in that. I know he was a fan of those Claremont books, and that's why he brought Kitty back. It actually opens up with a nod to some of those early books. But anyway, I love her, and I love them together.
I would almost argue that Kitty has had probably the most significant character development as you go through the X-Men comics since her appearance of any of the X-Men, honestly.
I mean, that is a credit to John Byrne and Chris Claremont. But it's also, I've said this, we're going to get in the weeds here with fandom, but that's okay. It's what we do when we talk. I've said this about Star Wars, that the character, for me, with the most fulfilling arc in all of Star Wars history is Ahsoka Tano. And this is a character who Dave Filoni and George Lucas created. It was Lucas's idea for Anakin to have a young girl Padawan. And when they introduced her in that Clone Wars theatrical movie, which was a couple of episodes stitched together, she was this annoying 14-year-old who was awful and Sky Guy and R2-y. And I thought, I hate this character. What is Lucas talking about? By the end of the Clone Wars and going into Rebels, this is the most incredible, groundbreaking character who has become disillusioned with the Jedi and her whole deal with Vader. I have felt so rewarded as a fan following Ahsoka's journey. I bring that up because it's very much like Kitty Pryde. When you meet her as a young girl, and then who she is now as a leader of teams, and of course everything with Lockheed that happened, I think you're right. I think that she is one of the most fulfilling X-Men characters to follow.
Goes on to lead the Xavier School in wake of Charles Xavier's death.
Yes, absolutely.
So just brilliant character,
Brilliant character. Well, thank you for that. I feel really giddy. I think we have time for just a couple more, and then we're going to end the show talking again about Buy Me a Coffee, which is an app that I think James and I are going to support. So before we get to that, let's do a couple more.
I like, as far as couple, because I don't read a lot of outside Marvel and DC comics. I will admit that I'm not that I'm a snob, because I'll pick up a couple books occasionally and say, oh, that's a great book, or oh yeah, I like this quite a bit, but I stick with Marvel and DC. That's mostly my wheelhouse. So I will have to go with Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter.
Okay, now for the audience who only knows the movies, they might not realize that they met Sharon Carter. It was Emily Van Camp, wasn't it?
Yes, in Captain America Winter Soldier.
And people forget about this. But tell people who Sharon Carter is and why you would make them a couple and not Peggy.
In the and again, the chemistry that Steve and Haley had in the movies, it was brilliant. I loved the both of them, and I loved Agent Carter the series. I was livid when they took it off the air.
Me too.
We needed a season 3 for sure.
I agree. I love that show.
But Sharon Carter in the comic books, again, Peggy was his love in the World War II era before he went into the ocean and got frozen. Sharon Carter was there. I want to say she started in the mid to late 70s. She was introduced. And I think Roy Thomas actually.
That is Peggy's niece.
I think it's her granddaughter in the comic, but it is her niece in the movie, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong because they retconned her origin a couple times in the comics.
In any respect, it's a little creepy. The Steve Rogers is sort of fixated on this one family.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, if I could put a duck down on my list, you could put a granddaughter. It's
Thank
fine.
you. I appreciate it. Or a niece. It's less creepy. Is it less creepy? Or
I don't know. All right. Well, that'll do it for our best couples. We got a little creepy on the list, but that's okay. Happy Valentine's Day from James Install and from Max Voisey. You can find him online at Geek to Me Radio. You can find me online at Max on Movies.
Thanks once again to Max on Movies. He hosted me at his place at the KTRS studios. Next time we'll have to have him over here, and we'll record a team-up show, which we'll likely try to do this a few times. It's like when Murder, She Wrote and Magnum P.I. crossed over. A lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm Magnum P.I. We'll just put it like that. We'll talk to you again next week. Huge show coming up next week, my Gallifrey 1 wrap-up, so you don't want to miss that. Until next week, my friends.
It's not in the way you watch I zombie. It's not in the way you watch The Flash. It's not in the way you love Scotty Young Art. It's not in the way you play Mario Kart. It's not in the way you look when you make Game of Thrones references. That's a show. This is Geek to Me Radio. That's a show. This is Geek to Me Radio.
Thank you, Lovers Peak. Good night.